Hey y'all, welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sophia, your host. Let's Talk is a podcast I created to talk to people about a certain topic or a certain passion they have and have an educational and fun conversation about it. Now, let's get to it. Welcome everybody to the first episode of Let's Talk. Today, let's talk leadership with Angel. Hi, Angel.
Hi, Sophia. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing? I know it's really early today.
Oh, I'm doing great. Well, I'm normally up early, so it's not that bad, but I've had a long week.
Me too. So, Angel, can you let us know a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Angel Marin, and it's such a pleasure, and I just want to thank you for having me as your guest today. To explain a little bit what I do is I work for a construction company where I do a lot of the administration. We do commercial buildings and we do all the metal framing, interior, exterior, and drywall, acoustical ceilings, stuff like that. But I also serve at my local church called Open Heavens, or in Spanish, Cielos, Abiertos, in the Mesquite area. And I'm the executive administrator at our church.
Wow, that's a lot of things that you do.
Yes.
You're busy.
When you're old, you tend to get busy.
So like I mentioned earlier, today we're talking about leadership, right?
Yes.
Can you explain us, in your opinion, what is leadership? How would you describe leadership?
Yes. To me, leadership has played an important part of my life because growing up, I really didn't have, guidance in this area per se. My parents, obviously, they worked hard, they provided, did what they could. But, a lot of times we don't really understand what real leadership really is, So if you look at it in a dictionary, you're going to find multiple answers, all types of answers. And it's all going to depend on the background of the person or the aspect of where they're studying or their profession, right? But there's times where we look up to people, right? Like we know people that we look up to. We tend to watch, movies or a documentary maybe, and there's somebody that we look up to, and sometimes we think that leadership, is more of a personality, than a set of skills that we can all develop and learn, And so I like what John Maxwell says. He's one of my favorite authors, especially when it comes to the topic. He says this, and I quote, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you're going to lead others, you need to gain influence. So many people have said this, leadership is the ability to obtain followers. And if I was to summarize leadership, I really think that's what it is. It is influence, You can't call yourself a leader, but, nobody's following you. People tend to follow leaders who are guiding them, who are helping them develop, in the walk of life or whatever area in your life that you need help in, because life is hard as it is and you can't do life alone, And I believe God always surrounds you with people that are always going to help you in your walk, But I like what Maxwell says, leadership is influence.
It's influence, yeah. I like what you mentioned earlier, that you said that you need followers to be a leader, right?
Yes.
You can't be a leader without those followers. Those followers are what make you a leader, right?
Yes.
How would you get those followers, I guess? How would you know which followers are good in a sense? Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, leadership is influence, is the influence you have on people. It's the effect that you have in their lives, the impact you make on others, like I was explaining. So when you impact people's lives, people will naturally want to follow you, But it's unfortunate that, a title or a position cannot accomplish this. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so as you're learning leadership and you're growing in life and you're growing in yourself, you have to take people with you.
You're saying that sometimes people follow people that shouldn't be followed, right? Because they think their personality makes them that leader, right?
Yes.
So what I had in my notes, basically saying the misconception of being like the big boss to show leadership is false, because you don't need to be like this big name, this big person to be able to lead others, right?
Yes.
different types of leadership. Because, say, my opinion on what is leadership, how would you describe leadership? Leadership is different for everybody else because there's loud leadership or quiet leadership.
Yes.
There's different types of leadership that different types of people do for others. Because myself, my experience, I'm the president of the speech and debate team, if, for those people that don't know. But the way I lead my team is different from, let's say, my vice president will lead the team, right? Because I'm more of a loud person in a leadership position, I guess you can say.
Yes.
And to lead others for me is to kind of let them know what they're doing wrong or what they're doing right, and vocally say what they need to be doing right. And maybe my vice president is going to be like a little bit quieter, Alejandra. Her name is Alejandra.
Yes.
And the way she leads, it's totally different from mine. She's in the background most of the time doing other stuff for other people, helping them in their own work, actually going in there and helping them do whatever they need to do. You know what I mean? So there's different ways to show leadership, right?
Yes, there's a lot of ways to show leadership, and going on that, what I can tell you, if I could say what leadership is not, leadership is not the ability to achieve a position. It's the influence you have for people who follow you, so personality traits, whether you're quiet, whether you're loud, like you were saying, has nothing to do with the ability to be able to lead, because people tend to think that in order for me to have a position or a position of authority to be a leader, I need to have that position. And that's not the case. Like you said, the misconception of having to be the big dog, and leaders tend to think that you have to be in that position in order for you to be able to lead. You know what I mean? But that's just totally not the case.
Yeah, everybody can be a leader, right? In their own way.
Yeah, I believe that everybody can. But I think if we were to ask the right question, instead of can everybody be a leader, is can everybody be a good leader?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because throughout history, we know so many people who have had a big following. If we tend to, which I like the definition of leadership is influence, of how many people that have not done so good in society have had a large following. You know what I mean? So I think the more proper question would be, can you be a good leader?
Maybe a good leader, yeah.
Right?
I get that, yes. Another thing that I kind of want to talk about is I heard this a long time ago in the past, and it really struck out to me because a lot of the time people always say what the qualities of a leader should have, right?
Yes.
And basically what I heard a long time ago was this: leadership is a verb, not a noun. So to kind of go more in detail, the definition of a verb is a word that expresses an action or state of being. And a noun is the name of something, a person, place, thing, or idea, right? And leadership is an idea, is like kind of like, something that you do.
Yes.
But I also believe that that's saying what it says, leadership is a verb, not a noun, which is like an action or state of being, right? So can you kind of explain to us, I guess, the leadership qualities versus leadership actions of a leader?
Yeah, so I love what you said, that leadership is a verb, it's not a noun, right? So some leadership qualities, that I believe you have to have is you have to have passion, because if you don't have passion, you're not going to, when things get tough, you're not going to keep pursuing your self-development, because I strongly believe that, in order to be a good leader, you have to have self-development. You have to be willing to invest in yourself, right? Then more than anything, because if you yourself don't go through that process, what can you really teach others, right? If you're not teaching yourself. And another thing that I think it's important as far as the quality goes is having integrity. Because to me, integrity is this: it's the person that you are when nobody sees you, right? And in my church, I get to speak a lot to the youth, and I always tell the youth, it's like, you're truly who you are is when you're by yourself in your own room when nobody sees you. That's the real you. Because a lot of times, we can fake who we are in public. Sometimes we're angry and we show the opposite emotion, and vice versa. But, we're who we truly are when we're in that room alone. And true integrity is being who you are at all times, no matter what. the situation, no matter who you are in front of, because a lot of people tend to act right when there's a position of authority per se. Like let's say that if you were to go into a court, right? And when you go into a court, there's a certain way that you present yourself before the judge, right? The way you dress, the way you talk. When the judge walks in, everybody has to rise up, right? And allow for the judge to come in or whatnot. And so a lot of times, we tend to only act right when the situation presents itself, right? But if we could take care of that individual when we're in our room, when nobody sees us, right? I think we're going to be able to flourish in every area of our life,
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I always say is that you got to be fat,
Mm-hmm.
and which is always funny every time I tell people, it's like, what? I got to be fat. And but, fat, it's being faithful, being available, and being teachable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're faithful, you make yourself available and you're teachable, I think you can go a long way. And I think obviously there's a lot of qualities, but those are the ones that I tend to gravitate on what I've pursued for my own personal life, to become a better leader.
Mm-hmm. I really love what you said earlier about, you being the real you whenever you're in your room, because my mom also says the same thing. It's always like, you don't show people the real you all the time unless, nobody's watching, right?
Yes.
And my mom's always like, you're supposed to do that, not show the real you, but always be the real you. So whatever you're doing in your room, you should be doing out here, right? Never showing people a different side of you, right? But I also liked the fat one. What was it again?
Faithful, available, and teachable.
Faithful, available, and teachable. I really like that. Faithful, available, and teachable. I really like the teachable part because I actually kind of talk about this next. What I have here written down is basically a good leader is a good learner.
Yes.
So the reason why I wrote that down is because this kind of goes back to the first point about a leader having to have followers to be a leader.
Yes.
And the way you kind of do that to like having those followers is being a good learner, being teachable. Because the way that works, in my opinion, is having like the leader and the follower basically being the same. There's no imbalance between them, right? Because
Yes.
even though there's, I guess, a title per se, both follower and leadership are kind of,
there has to be that connection.
yeah, that connection.
Yes.
And being able to, trust in each other and having that back and forth to be able to actually lead or actually follow. Does that make sense?
Yes. And to have that connection, it all begins with the leader,
Mhm.
because Maxwell also teaches in, a lot of his books that a leader should always create an atmosphere for everybody to be able to learn. And if you yourself, don't make the people around you comfortable to where you're not a Mr. Know-it-all, you're not demanding, but asking. But at the end of the day, a leader always leads by example, no matter what. And that kind of leads also to the leadership actions, because I just gave a couple of qualities, but one of the actions is, a leader should always lead by example, no matter what. And I cannot ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do. I believe that's not a true leader. Because at the end of the day, being a leader is not being a dictator, because dictators have a lot of followers, but it goes back to the same question like I said earlier. Could you be a good leader, And at the end of the day, a leader should always lead by example, So, influence, going back to influence, leadership has always been described as the ability to be able to influence others. So at the end of the day, take people down the road you have already been down. That's another one of the actions that I strongly believe that is very, very strong, The reason why you're able to take people and influence people and create that atmosphere to be a good learner, for people to learn from you, is because you've already been down that road, and because you've been down that road, you understand the bump on the roads, right? Where you could help people to be able to accomplish, the goals that they set for themselves, and that's what a leader should be able to do more than anything. And when you tend to have those personality, qualities and those leadership skills, as far as leading by example, people are gonna naturally gravitate towards following you. Because I didn't start studying leadership until I gave my life over to Christ 13 years ago. And at first, I didn't even understand anything about leadership, until I came across John Maxwell. But I always ask myself, why are people tending to listen to what I have to say when it comes to, reading the Bible and teaching the Bible and stuff like that? And even in my walk with Christ, as he started changing me and I started becoming a better person. And at the end of the day, it's because, the experience that I've had and the road that I've already been on, I've always tried to help people, in life to understand that there's a bigger purpose in life than just existing, because we tend to get so caught up with the world, with society, with, school if you're going to school, work if you're going to work. And I've always said this, it's life sucks whenever you live only to go to work and then pay bills, and then that cycle happens over and over and over again. But when you live for others and you want to help others, life is very satisfying, because at the end of the day, you're not living for yourself, but you're living for the people around you, and when you have that mentality, you're always going to be a good learner, like you said, because at the end of the day, I've always said this, the moment that you think you know it all, you've already reached your pinnacle. You're never going to go any higher. So one of my models and one of the things that I've tried to implement, in my life is I'm going to be a student for the rest of my life. Because at the end of the day, we can never know it all. It's impossible, right? But if we always have that mentality of, I need to keep learning. And not only that, but what I learn, I can teach others, you know what I mean? Then there's no limit to how high you can get. Because at the end of the day, you're going to put that limit on yourself.
Yeah, totally. I really like what you said, living for others and not always, being in that cycle of work, paying bills, all that stuff. Because I really believe that's what I want to do in life. I want to live for others. I want to help others. I want to be that leader. I always want to learn from others. I want to ask you this. Should a leader have that experience, I guess, because you were talking about experiences and all that stuff. Should a leader have past experiences? Does that make a leader a good leader? Or would it make it a better leader? Or does experience not come into place in here?
Well, no, I strongly believe that experiences can, but I actually like, what Vince Lombardi said, on the question that you just asked me, is that, leaders are not born, they're made. A lot of times we think that the moment that you're born and you start growing up, you're going to have all the experience in the world, and that you're going to naturally be born a leader. Yes, there's some people that gravitate towards being more of a natural leader, but I strongly believe that, I like what he said, leaders are not born, they're made. And so that's something that, I've come to understand, that if I wanted to become a better leader, I needed to put in the work. And unfortunately, there's people who don't want to put in the work, right? Because everyone can be a leader, but it's sadly that not everyone is, you know what I mean? And when I say is because they're not good leaders. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, we're always influenced by the people around us, right? Let's say you were to go to a restaurant, right? And people tend to ask, "What's the special of the day?" Or you ask your waiter, your waitress, "Hey, you know what? What's good here?" Right? And based on the answer that they give you, it's going to influence what you're going to order from the menu. So at the end of the day, that waiter or waitress is having an influence in your life, on an unconscious level, because you're making your decision based upon what they're telling you, right? So at the end of the day, people are always, influence us around us, right? Even our parents, when they tell us what to do, what not to do, how to act, when not to act, how not to act, when they told us to do our chores, and we don't want to. But at the end of the day, we're constantly being influenced by the world around us, right? So at the end of the day is how much of a good leader are you being? Because whether you like it or not, you're going to influence the people around you. And I've heard this from different people, and they've said that even if you're very, very introverted, in your lifetime, you're at least going to influence 10 people, whether you like it or not, on a conscious or an unconscious level. So now you got to ask yourself, if in my lifetime, even if I'm introverted and I don't have a lot of friends and I don't tend to, be so much of a people person, you're going to influence people whether you like it or not. Because hasn't it ever happened where we're having a bad day, our attitude is not the best, and then all of a sudden that rubs off on our siblings or somebody in the household? See, so right there, you already influence somebody without you even realizing, just by your attitude. And because you're basing your attitude based on what's going on at that particular moment, which is okay because we have emotions, we're humans, right? And so that's something that's really, really big for me.
And okay, so you said that that's kind of like a bad influence, being in the bad mood and you influence other people, right? How do you avoid having those bad influences. I know like being in a bad mood wasn't as big, but you have those big influences that are really bad in your life, right? How would you
Hmm.
say to avoid those?
Well, you can't avoid, but this is where you do start gaining experience
Mm-hmm.
as you walk in life, especially as when you start being a young man and young woman into a teenager, and then you graduate school, you join the workforce. So at the end of the day, those are emotions that you're not gonna be able to avoid. We are gonna go through that, right? But the way that you do it is you understand, hey, this is an emotion. And because I'm feeling a certain way, that doesn't mean that the people around me should have to pay for it. Because, for the people who have joined the workforce, they can tell you experiences of when their boss is having a bad day, the entire office is having a bad day. And see, to me, that boss is being a leader,
Mm-hmm.
but he or she is being a good leader because the whole office ended up having a bad day because you had a bad day.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, you have to realize, that what you're going through in life, you have to learn how to control your emotions. Because if you don't control your emotions, you're going to impact the people around you, either for the good or for the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't it happen where even sometimes you're having a bad day and we always know that person that's very cheerful, very happy, always smiling, always positive. And don't you tend to change your mentality on, hey, you know what? I was having a bad day, but this person just made my day better. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, you can see that we're constantly always influence people, whether we like it or not.
Okay, so for you, because I know I'm barely getting out of high school, I'm about to go into the quote unquote real world, right?
Yes.
How would I get those? Let's go to the opposite. Instead of bad, I guess, influences, bad experiences, how would you say I should get those good experiences? How should I get that mentor, whatnot, to be able to be a better leader or a good leader?
Well, there's a lot of ways, but a good leader is always someone who is constantly seeking growth in every area of our lives. Because, like I said, when you go back to taking care of the person in the room when you're on your own, if you could take care of that person, you're gonna be a good sibling. You're gonna be a good daughter. You're gonna be a good student. You're gonna be a good employee. You're gonna be a good boss. You're going to be a good girlfriend, or boyfriend. You're going to be a good husband, a good wife. But the problem is that we're not taking care of that. So a good leader is a person who is constantly seeking knowledge, always looking to learn no matter what the world throws at you, right? And you could do this through books, right? You could do this with the people around you. You can do this by learning from your own mistakes and even the mistakes of others, right? And even you can learn from your own accomplishments or the accomplishments of others, or the experiences that you gain through life. Because let's say you had an experience where you made a mistake and you did something that you weren't very proud of. Well, just a lot of times we tend to always stick into concentrate on that mistake. But what would happen if we were to change our mentality? You know what? It happened, so there's nothing we can do, but I can become a better person by learning from that and not making that mistake again. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, the only way really is by surrounding yourself with the right people, by reading books, by always trying to invest in yourself. Because it's sad to say of what I've seen, since I started in this topic of leadership, which I am very passionate about, is that people don't want to invest in themselves. People want other people to do things for them, and you not do something for your own, you know?
I see a lot of that too, being in like the school system, being
Yes.
surrounded by a lot of, I guess you can call it clubs or like classes that do include having leaders or having some sort of higher position. And others, a lot of the times people don't, they want the title,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want the work that comes with the title. Does that
Yes.
make sense?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time people want to have that validation, so to speak, of others, of being that, I guess, big boss, big dog, like we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
But when it actually comes to the work and the time and everything else that you need to be a good leader, to be a good, let's say, secretary, treasurer, whatever,
Yes.
it's just like they don't do anything. They don't put in the work, don't want to put in the work because they're more focused on themselves other than others or whoever they're around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but and when I say and I like what you said, they're more focused on themselves, because I talked about earlier, you have to invest in yourself. But when you tend to have that mentality of what you were talking about, you're gonna focus on yourself, but in the wrong aspects, in the wrong ways, because instead of trying to learn and trying to grow, from the people around you, from your own mistakes, from other people's mistakes, you're always gonna tend to point at other people's mistake. And it's sad to say that it's very easy to point out somebody else's mistakes, but it's very, very hard to point out your own mistakes, right? Because when people are angry, right, and people are having a bad day and bickering, don't we always tend to criticize the people around us? But when have you ever seen somebody pissed off and angry and they criticize themselves? It hardly ever happens. I mean, I don't think I've been in many rooms in a situation where that happens, But a person is a strong leader when at the end of the day, hey, you know what, guys, the reason why there's chaos, the reason why things aren't going like they're supposed to, because it was my fault.
They take accountability of themselves.
Yes, and not many people tend to do that. And I think that's another good quality of a good leader, because it's very easy to point somebody else's mistakes, but it's very hard to point out your own. For example, and this is funny what I'm about to say, but it's very, very true. When you wake up in the morning, you don't look too good. Right? And girls tend to need more time to get ready than men do, right? You want to do your hair, you want to do your makeup, you got to do all types of things, right? I mean, like my sister, for example, she takes at least about an hour and a half just to do her makeup. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? This is taking way too long, right? But when you tend to look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, it's not very pleasing what you see. So if you're not looking too well in the morning, especially if you had a rough night, you're not going to tell yourself, oh, I look ugly, I look busted, right? Yes, people tend to do that, but at the end of the day, it's not very pleasant to be able to do that. In leadership, it's always looking in the mirror. And a lot of times you have to understand that you're not going to look like what you're looking at. And if you don't like what you're looking at, then that's, I believe, a direction that you can take on, okay, if I don't like what I'm looking at, then I need to change it. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't think that way.
To close this out, to kind of end this, is there anything else you would like to say to the people listening or to the people watching? Anything, a big idea or any last words?
I would say, based on everything that we talked about and talking about leadership, I believe, because leadership to me is influence, if you want to become a great leader, you have to be willing to understand that there are people who are going to walk around you, who are going to be around you, right? Who are going to look up to you, whether you like it or not, who you're going to influence on a conscious and an unconscious level. And if you're invested in yourself, and you're like we talked about earlier, being faithful, being available, being teachable, right? Being a good learner, all of those are good qualities that if you live by, you're going to gain a lot of experience in life. And as a leader, you always have to take people with you. You can't do life alone. So a leader is one who knows the way because he's already walked the way, right? So a leader goes the way because he followed someone else who showed him the way, right? And he can show you the way because someone else took the time to show him the way. So at the end of the day, in life, I've had people in my life who have influenced me, who have helped me. And, in order to give back, I what I've learned from them and the growth that I've gained from the people around me, I have to understand that I have to give that to other people. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, leadership is very, very important. And I think at the end of the day, we got to ask ourselves, are we being a good leader or are we being a bad leader? But I strongly believe, even for the most shy, introverted people, you're gonna influence somebody whether you like it or not. Now the question is it gonna be good or is it gonna be bad? And I think that's the question that we should all ask ourselves at the end of the day.
Well, thank you, Angel. Thank you for the wise words, everything that you talked about today. Everybody really learned a lot from today, and everybody can take something out of what you said and really apply it to themselves, to their life, to whatever they think fits them the most. Thank you again for being my first person the first episode.
No, well, thank you, Sophia, so much for having me. And I feel honored and privileged that I got to be on with you and being your first guest. I hope everybody learned. And hi to everybody out there. And thank you so much for having me. Such an honor and pleasure.
We talked about a lot today. That's what being a good leader is and how being a good leader is influence. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you again for those out there who are listening. If you want to learn more about Let's Talk, you can find us at KEOM 88.5. Or you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Play. Now, don't forget about us. Come back next time where we talk about, does the older sibling have it harder or the youngest?